Hello, third years. Okay, so today we are going to read a story together and we're going to use some graphic organizers to talk about literary elements and help us to write a summary. So after the story, you will see 3 sheets of paper attached in the seesaw. Don't worry if you can't, if it's too much to try to type onto the seesaw or you can't print it, it's okay. Because the cool thing about graphic organizers is that they're pretty easy to reproduce on your own paper. So all this is sheet of paper with 5 boxes. We've got conflict, solution, plot, characters, setting. These are our important parts in a story. So when we tell a story, what makes the story interesting is that we have characters that we can relate to. We know where the story takes place, what happens in the story, and there's always some kind of, at least one problem that the main character or characters have to solve together, and then there's a solution. So if you think about, I don't want to use, well, there's a bit of controversy now with Harry Potter, but let's say you love the Harry Potter books and you know that the characters, Harry Potter, Hermione, Ron, like the main characters. Our main villain or antagonist would be Voldemort, and then of course he's got his slew of evil dudes. The setting would be, depending on like which book you're reading, but usually the setting would be what? Hogwarts, right? That's where a lot of the story takes place. There could be multiple settings. So it also tells us when the story takes place. So Harry Potter is supposed to be kind of like modern day. It didn't happen like a long time ago. And then the plot. So Chamber of Secrets, that's what happens in the story, right? Or not Chamber of Secrets. Let's do the first one, the Sorcerer's Stone. So that's the one where Harry, he goes to Hogwarts for the first time, and oh gosh, now I'm blanking. What happens in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone? Maybe I should have chosen a simpler one, because it's funny when you get a camera on you, it's just like, it's weird. And I feel like I'm like talking to myself because I'm looking at myself. But anyway, maybe you could help me out and you know the story. Or think about another kind of story you like. Even the 3 Little Pigs, right? Our characters. 3 little pigs and the wolf. The setting where it takes place, we don't really know like what town or wherever they live, but this little place where they have their homes. The plot, we have the pig that makes the house out of straw, the pig that makes the house out of sticks, the one that makes the house out of the bricks. The wolf wants to eat the pigs. He's knocking on each one, says he'll blow the house down. So the conflict would be, it's always a problem. Conflict, problem, same kind of thing. The problem is the wolf's trying to eat the pigs, right? And he was able to blow down the house of straw and sticks. The solution was they finally made a house strong enough. But then when the wolf climbs up to the top, comes down the chimney, they leave a pot there, the fire, boom. They figure out how to get the wolf to leave him alone, essentially, right? So any good story has these things. And so does Harry Potter. I just completely blanked on what happens in the first one. Oh, it's the creepy guy who has Voldemort on the back of his neck. So yeah, it's like the troll, that's right. There was the troll, those evil things. The conflict would be that, Voldemort, pretty much in every story, Voldemort's trying to get Harry or stop Harry, and their solution is they work together. Hermione's so smart. She figures out spells and they defeat the evil, and everybody, yay, celebration, right? Pretty typical. So I made Harry Potter sound really boring. But this is just like a graphic organizer to help you organize the story, right? And then you'll see 2 other papers we'll fill this out together, and then I would like you to basically, you'll take that and use it and write complete sentences, because especially when we're in 3rd grade, that's our standard. We write in complete sentences. So this is a graphic organizer as well, but it just kind of helps us. This one's purpose is to now take all those literary elements and summarize it. So we have this flow of like, it's kind of like retelling the story to somebody who didn't read it. They can now know, oh, this is what happened, right? So our title will be A Fine, Fine School. Who are the main characters? You'll write the main characters are, so that's how we would have it be a complete sentence. It helps to restate the question to make it a complete sentence. The main characters are Tilly, so-and-so. We haven't really read the story yet, so you don't know. Where does the story take place? The story takes place at, what was the most exciting part? The most exciting part was when, what was the main problem? The main problem was that, what was the solution? So-and-so and so-and-so solved the problem by, there you go. So that's me just quickly leading you through how you can turn those questions into complete sentences. But let's get to the main part, the plot of our lesson. Hold on just a second here. Weird. All right. There we go. Oh. A Fine, Fine School by Sharon Creech, pictures by Harry Bliss. And what an interesting essential question. It's like they knew, but not really. How is learning at school different from learning at home? I bet we could answer that question by now, right? We've been learning at home for a little while, and we remember what it was like to learn at school. So maybe you want to answer that as well. Mr. Keene was a principal who loved his school. Every morning he strolled down the hallway and saw the children in their classes. He saw them learning shapes and colors and numbers and letters. He saw them reading and writing and drawing and painting. He saw them making dinosaurs and forts and pyramids. Oh, he would say, aren't these fine children? Aren't these fine teachers? Isn't this a fine, fine school? Near Mr. Keene's school, Tilly lived with her parents and her brother and her dog, Beans, in a small house next to a big tree. On Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays, Tilly went off to school. At school, Tilly learned her shapes and colors and numbers and letters. Sometimes when she saw Mr. Keene standing in the hallway, he waved. Aren't these fine children? He said to himself. Aren't these fine teachers? Isn't this a fine, fine school? On the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, Tilly climbed her favorite tree and she took Beans on walks and threw him sticks. Let go now, Beans. And she pushed her brother on a swing and tried to teach him how to skip. Be one with the skip. But on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and Fridays, Tilly went off to school. Beans and her brother did not like to see her go. Hurry, hurry, hurry home, her brother called. One day, Mr. Keene called all the students and teachers together and said, "This is such a fine, fine school. I love this school. Let's have more school. From now on, let's have school on Saturdays too." The teachers and the students did not want to go to school on Saturdays, but no one knew how to tell Mr. Keene that. He was so proud of the children and the teachers, of all the learning they were doing every day. And so that Saturday, Tilly set off for school. "But it's Saturday. What about the swings?" her brother called. Do they look very happy? Imagine how you would feel if our principal was like, "Time to come to school on Saturdays." The following month, Mr. Keene announced, "This is such a fine, fine school. I love this school. Let's have more school. From now on, let's have school on Sundays too." The teachers and the students did not want to go to school on Sundays, but no one knew how to tell Mr. Keen that. He was so proud of the children and the teachers, of all the learning they were doing every day, and so that Sunday, Tilly set off for school. But it's Sunday! What about the skipping? Her brother called. The following month, Mr. Keen called everyone together again and said, "This is such a fine, fine school. I love this school. Let's have more school. From now on, let's have school in the summer too, all summer long, every single day. How much we will learn," he said. "We can learn everything. We will learn about numbers and letters, colors and shapes, the Romans and the Egyptians and the Greeks. We will learn about dinosaurs and castles and everything. We will learn everything." They look happy about learning everything. The teachers and the students did not want to go to school on Saturdays and Sundays and holidays and all summer long, every single day. But no one knew how to tell Mr. Keen that. He was so proud of the children and the teachers, of all the learning they were doing every day. And so on the first day of summer, Tilly set off for school. "But it's summer! What about summer?" her brother called. Just for the record, I wouldn't have any problem saying something to Mr. Keen about that. So what is the main problem of the story? Do we think we know our problem yet? I think we might have figured out our problem. The problem is what? That's right. Mr. Keen wants the kids to go to school every single day. That's a problem. Let's see how this problem is solved, or conflict. And that day, Tilly went to see Mr. Keen. She stood in his office in front of his desk. "What a fine, fine school this is," Mr. Keen said. "What amazing things everyone is learning." "Yes," Tilly said, "we certainly are learning some amazing things." "A fine, fine school," Mr. Keen said. "But," Tilly said, "not everyone is learning." "What?" Mr. Keen said. He looked very worried. Who isn't learning? Tell me, and I will see that they learn." I like that little detail. There's his toothbrush there and his pen like he never goes home. "My dog Beans hasn't learned how to sit," Tilly said, "and he hasn't learned how to jump over the creek." "Oh," Mr. Keen said. "And my little brother hasn't learned how to swing or skip." "Oh," Mr. Keen said. Skipping for little brothers. "And I," she said. "But you go to school," Mr. Keen said, "to our fine, fine school." "True," Tilly said, "but I haven't learned how to climb very high in my tree, and I haven't learned how to sit in my tree for a whole hour." "Oh," Mr. Keen said. That day, Mr. Keen walked up and down the halls, looking at the children and the teachers. Up and down he walked, up and down, up and down. What do we see in these pictures? This one's a good one. Look how tired he looks. Look here. "We miss you, son. Love, Mom and Dad." This question here, what do the illustrations tell you about how the characters feel? They probably feel tired, overwhelmed, maybe a little depressed. They don't look very happy. The next morning, Mr. Keen called everyone together. The children and the teachers were very worried. Mr. Keen said, "This is a fine, fine school with fine, fine children and fine, fine teachers, but not everyone is learning." The children and the teachers were very, very worried. Mr. Keen said, "There are dogs who need to learn how to sit and how to jump creeks." Why do you think they're worried? I bet they'd be worried by now. Every time they have a meeting, he's going to announce more school, right? What did he mean? Was he going to make their dogs come to school? They're little brothers and sisters who need to learn how to swing and how to skip. What did he mean? Was he going to make their younger brothers and sisters come to school too? The children and the teachers were very, very, very worried. And you, all of you, children and teachers, you need to learn how to climb a tree and sit in it for an hour, Mr. Keen said. The children and the teachers were very worried. And so from now on, we will not have school on Saturdays or Sundays or in the summer. Free at last. A huge, enormous, roaring cheer soared up to the ceiling and floated out the window so that everyone in the town heard the fine, fine children and the fine, fine teachers shout, fine, fine, fine. And the fine, fine children and the fine, fine teachers lifted Mr. Keen up, and they carried him down the hallway and up out the doors and through the town and up and down, in and out, and everywhere they went, the people said, what a fine, fine school with such fine, fine teachers and fine, fine children and a fine, fine principal. The end. So here we are. I'm going to stop sharing so you can see this better here. So our conflict, we said, was Mr. Keen wants, oh, I think this is about dead. Mr. Keen wants everyone to come to school every day. The solution. Does anybody know what the solution was? How did that change? Because Mr. Keen he wasn't seeing it, right? He was just like walking around going, wow, this is great, so fine. And it wasn't until Tilly came. She spoke to Mr. Keen and said that not everyone was learning. Our plot, what happens in the story? The principal loved his school so much that he thought it might be a good idea. I'll say it would be a good idea for teachers and children to come to school every day. The plot is essentially what happens, right? I'm going to keep it brief for our graphic organizer. Our characters, we had Tilly, Mr. Keen, we had Tilly's brother, and I've done this before, kids always like to include, and Beans, the dog. But if we want to think about our main characters are Tilly and Mr. Keen. So I'm going to underline them so we know that they're our main characters. And our setting, well, the setting takes place, and for a graphic, we don't have to, Tilly's house, or Tilly's house, or outside Tilly's house, and then the school. Doesn't really talk about when, but we can assume it's kind of like present day. If it doesn't really say, it's kind of like any time in the present is the assumption. So there's your graphic organizer. I wrote in cursive. You can practice writing cursive if you like. So when you fill out your sheet about a fine school, put fine, comma, fine school. I need to go back and look and see who was the author. I can't remember. The author was Sharon Creech. Who are the main characters? Remember, we're gonna say the main characters are, and we could really just say Tilly and Mr. Keen. Okay? The story takes place sometimes at outside Tilly's house, but mostly it takes place at the school. Okay? So your follow-up work is you want to fill this out to kind of help guide you, because I'm just taking my answers here and then I'm going to rewrite them in complete sentences here. Okay? And you're going to see these templates again for other stories. You can use them for any story, right? Those are our literary elements. We always talk about, or for literature are our fiction, our made-up stories. We wouldn't use these for informational text. Something else I forgot to mention. So yeah, the genre of this book, it's fiction. And we would call it kind of humorous fiction. It's funny, it's exaggerated. Like the chances of this happening in real life, wouldn't, because there's just certain laws and things in place. A principal can't just be like, well, this school's great, let's come every day. But it's a funny, humorous story. So I hope you enjoyed it, A Fine School, and reach out if you have any questions about the follow-up work. It'll be on Seesaw and in Google Classroom, and I'll see you later.